The quantum signature flickered across Dr. Elena Rodriguez's primary display like a ghost, there and gone in less time than it takes a human heart to beat. Most researchers would have missed it. Most computers would have filtered it out as statistical noise. But Elena Rodriguez was not most researchers. Her fingers, calloused from years of late-night coding and quantum manipulation, danced across the holographic interface. The scars on her left hand, remnants of an experimental quantum entanglement accident 5 years ago, seemed to tingle with anticipation. Those scars were a reminder that the universe was far more complex than most humans understood. The lab around her hummed with sophisticated equipment, a testament to the United Earth Defense Research Center's commitment to pushing scientific boundaries. Located in the reconstructed Buenos Aires Scientific Corridor, the facility represented humanity's most advanced research complex. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city's intricate blend of sustainable architecture. Living buildings with vertical gardens, solar-reactive surfaces, and quantum-responsive infrastructure that seemed to breathe with the rhythm of urban life. Elena zoomed in on the quantum signature, her augmented reality contact lenses parsing data at speeds that would have been impossible a decade ago. The anomaly was unlike anything in the current xenological databases. Most intriguing was its source, a region of deep space that, according to standard star charts, should have been empty. "Era," she called out to her quantum eye assistant, "run a full spectral analysis. Cross-reference with the Hawking Deep Space Archive and the Quantum Interference Patterns database." The holographic display shifted, revealing layers of complex data. Araya, Adaptive Research Intelligence Algorithm, was more than just a computer system. It was a cutting-edge quantum AI that had been Elena's primary research focus for the past 3 years. Preliminary analysis complete. Araya's neutral voice responded. The AI's interface was deliberately designed to avoid human-like characteristics. Quantum signature does not match any known stellar phenomenon, artificial construction, or previously recorded xenological event. Elena's right eyebrow arched. In her world, such a statement was extraordinary. Humanity had mapped substantial portions of the Milky Way and maintained diplomatic or observational relationships with 17 confirmed extraterrestrial civilizations. Undefined was no longer a common scientific term. A notification pinged. Incoming secure transmission from Global Defense Command. Director Michael Okonkwo's holographic image materialized, a tall, dark-skinned man with cybernetic implants that traced elegant lines along his temples. Those implants were more than decorative. They represented the pinnacle of human-machine integration, allowing near-instantaneous processing of complex strategic information. "Rodriguez," he said without preamble, "your quantum anomaly just triggered every deep space monitoring system on and off planet. What are we looking at?" Elena pulled up the data visualization, her movements precise and practiced. The quantum signature was unlike anything in human or known alien records. It wasn't a signal. It wasn't radiation. It was something else, a ripple in the fundamental fabric of space-time that suggested something was watching or preparing. "It's a preliminary detection," she explained, "but the quantum interference patterns suggest an observational mechanism far beyond our current technological understanding. This isn't a communication attempt. This is surveillance." Okonkwo's cybernetic implants flickered, processing the information. "Surveillance of what?" "Of us," Elena said quietly. "Of Earth." The implications hung in the air like a gathering storm. Humanity had long suspected it wasn't alone in the universe. They had discovered multiple alien civilizations, some peaceful, some indifferent, some merely curious. But this was different. This felt like something was sizing them up. Measuring. Calculating. Araya's voice cut through the tension. "Recommendation. Initiate comprehensive threat assessment protocol. Quantum signature suggests potential external technological presence with capabilities significantly beyond current human detection methods." Elena's scared hand traced the holographic data. Something was coming. Something was watching. and humanity was about to be tested in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. The first radar ping was just the beginning. The Global Defense Council chamber was a study in controlled chaos. Holographic displays flickered with data streams from every corner of human-controlled space. Traditional national boundaries had long since dissolved, replaced by a unified planetary governance that emerged from decades of environmental crisis and technological revolution. Colonel Marcus Chen stood at the center of the room, his prosthetic eye, a gleaming cybernetic marvel that was equal parts medical miracle and strategic asset, scanning the assembled experts. Each person represented a critical piece of humanity's most ambitious defense project ever conceived. To his left sat Dr. Aisha O'Keefe, a 62-year-old cybernetics expert whose work in neural-machine interfaces had revolutionized human-computer interaction. Her skin, rich and dark, was marked with intricate biotechnological tattoos that were actually living neural network interfaces. Retired from active research, she had been called back for what might be humanity's most critical mission. Beside her, Arjun Mehta looked almost out of place. At just 19, the quantum prodigy from Mumbai was the youngest person ever invited to a Global Defense Council emergency session. His fingers constantly moved, seeming to dance across invisible interfaces, processing information at speeds that made most supercomputers look archaic. The quantum signature Dr. Rodriguez detected is more than an anomaly. Chen began, his voice calm but carrying the weight of decades of military strategic planning. It's a preliminary reconnaissance. Someone, or something, is mapping our capabilities. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, bringing up a holographic representation of the quantum signature. It wasn't a simple wave or pattern. It was a complex, almost organic mesh of data points that seemed to shift and breathe even as they watched. This isn't just observation, she explained. It's a form of advanced scanning that goes beyond traditional electromagnetic or quantum detection. Whatever is out there is attempting to understand us at a fundamental level. Arjun leaned forward, his augmented reality contact lenses parsing the data in real time. It's like a comprehensive systems check, he muttered, more to himself than to the room. But not just of our technology. It feels like it's scanning our potential. Dr. O'Keefe's biotechnological tattoos pulsed slightly, a visual representation of her neural networks processing the information. The scanning methodology suggests an intelligence far beyond our current understanding. This isn't about gathering intelligence. This is about assessment. Assessment for what? Director Okonkwo's holographic image materialized, his cybernetic implants casting subtle blue lines across his temples. A moment of silence followed. The implications were clear but unspoken. Assessment typically preceded elimination. Chen's prosthetic eye zoomed in on the data, running simultaneous computational analyses. Project Terra Force isn't just a defense initiative, he said slowly. It's going to be our offensive capability, our ability to be unpredictable. The project's core concept was revolutionary. Instead of developing traditional weapons or defensive systems, they would create an adaptive technological ecosystem. A living, breathing network that could evolve faster than any potential threat could anticipate. We're going to weaponize human potential itself, Rodriguez explained. Her scarred hand moved across the holographic display, revealing layers of complex quantum algorithms, not through traditional means, through adaptability, through our capacity to reimagine solutions. Arjun's eyes lit up. At 19, he represented a generation that had grown up with technology as a living, breathing extension of human capability. The quantum resonance adaptation protocol, he said, isn't just a technology. It's a new form of existence. The room fell silent. They all understood the magnitude of what they were proposing. This wasn't just about defending Earth. This was about redefining what it meant to be a species capable of survival. Dr. O'Keefe spoke, her voice carrying the weight of decades of technological innovation. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to adapt, to look at a problem and see not just a challenge, but an opportunity for transformation. Outside the council chamber, the reconstructed Buenos Aires skyline gleamed, a testament to humanity's resilience. Buildings that had been destroyed by climate disasters now stood as living monuments to human ingenuity. Solar reactive surfaces that could heal themselves. Quantum-responsive infrastructures that could reconfigure in milliseconds. They were about to take that same principle and apply it to their very survival. "We're ready," Colonel Chen said quietly. "Let them come." The test chamber looked like nothing so much as a cathedral of impossible technology. Transparent quantum reactive walls shimmered with holographic data streams, capturing every microscopic detail of the experiment about to unfold. Arjun Mehta stood at the central control station, his fingers moving so rapidly across the interface that they seemed to blur. At 19, he represented a generation born into a world where technology was as natural as breathing. His neural interface, a delicate network of bioengineered connections that ran from his brainstem to his fingertips, allowed him to process information at speeds that made traditional computing look like ancient mechanical calculators. Initiating QRAP primary diagnostic sequence, he announced, his voice betraying a mixture of scientific excitement and carefully controlled tension. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the observation deck, her augmented reality contact lenses parsing multiple data streams simultaneously. The quantum resonance adaptation protocol was more than just a technological system. It was a living, breathing computational organism designed to do something never before attempted: create a technological immune system that could learn, adapt, and transform faster than any potential threat could anticipate. The first test was deceptively simple. A series of increasingly complex attack algorithms would be launched against the QRAP system. But these weren't traditional cyber attacks. They were quantum-level intrusions designed to test the absolute limits of adaptive technology. Dr. Aisha O'Keefe's voice came through the communication channel, her cybernetic interfaces humming with anticipation. Initial quantum entanglement stabilizers are online. Neural network mapping is at 98.7% synchronization. The chamber itself seemed to hold its breath. The first attack came. A quantum algorithm so complex that it would have overwhelmed any traditional defensive system in microseconds. It was designed to be unbeatable, a computational Gordian knot that no existing technology could unravel. But QRAP wasn't existing technology. As the algorithm struck, something extraordinary happened. Instead of blocking or deflecting, the system began to communicate. The quantum reactive walls of the chamber shifted, their molecular structure realigning in real time. Data streams that had been linear suddenly became three-dimensional, then four-dimensional, creating computational spaces that shouldn't have been possible. Arjun began to laugh, not out of hysteria, but pure scientific euphoria. "It's not just defending," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "It's learning. It's translating the attack into a new form of communication." The attack algorithm, designed to be an unbreakable weapon, was being parsed, understood, and essentially conversed with. QRAP wasn't fighting the intrusion. It was studying it, breaking it down to its most fundamental quantum components, and then rebuilding it into something entirely new. Dr. Rodriguez's hand unconsciously traced the quantum entanglement scars on her left hand. This was more than a technological breakthrough. This was a fundamental reimagining of how systems could interact with potential threats. "Structural integrity at 100%, Arjun reported. "But that's not even the interesting part. Watch the computational mapping." The holographic displays began to show something unprecedented. The QRAP system was creating new computational pathways that didn't exist in any previous design. It was generating solutions to problems that hadn't even been asked yet. Dr. O'Keefe's voice crackled with excitement. "The system isn't just adaptive, it's predictive. It's creating computational models of potential future threats based on millisecond-level quantum interactions." Colonel Marcus Chen watched from another observation deck, his cybernetic eye running simultaneous threat assessments. What they were watching wasn't just a defensive system. It was a living, evolving computational organism that could reshape itself faster than any potential threat could comprehend. The final phase of the test pushed the boundaries of technological understanding. Multiple simultaneous attack vectors were launched: cyber intrusions, quantum disruption algorithms, even experimental electromagnetic destabilization patterns. QRAP didn't just survive, it transformed. The chamber's walls began to pulse with a strange, almost biological rhythm. Data streams twisted and reconfigured themselves, creating computational spaces that defied traditional understanding of information transfer. "We've done it," Arjun whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "We've created a technological system that thinks like a living organism." Dr. Rodriguez knew they had just changed everything. This wasn't just a defensive technology. This was a new form of existence. Something was coming for humanity. And now, humanity was ready. The first wave hit Los Angeles at precisely 14:37 local time. To any external observer, it would have appeared as nothing more than a momentary shimmer in the atmosphere, a quantum disruption so subtle that most would have missed it entirely. But its effects were anything but subtle. Every electronic system in the city simultaneously died. Traffic lights went dark. Communication networks collapsed. Power grids flatlined. Billions of dollars of infrastructure seemed to simply stop for exactly 3.6 seconds. Then something unprecedented happened. The city didn't collapse. It adapted. Traffic systems began to reconfigure themselves. Autonomous vehicles that had been instantly disabled suddenly rerouted, creating complex choreographies that prevented potential collisions. Solar-integrated building systems began drawing power from molecular energy storage units that the initial quantum disruption hadn't touched. Communication networks rebuilt themselves using adaptive quantum mesh technologies that the QRAP system had developed. In the underground command center, Colonel Marcus Chen watched the city's response with a mixture of scientific fascination and military precision. His cybernetic eye processed multiple data streams, tracking the city's quantum-level response in real time. "It's not just surviving," he muttered to Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who stood beside him. "It's evolving." The quantum disruption had been designed as a total systems killer, a technology that had systematically eliminated hundreds of developing civilizations across multiple star systems. The collective, the vast interstellar alliance that had been quietly observing humanity, had perfected this technique over millennia. Their computational models suggested a 99.998% success rate in neutralizing technological infrastructure. They had not anticipated Los Angeles. Dr. Rodriguez's fingers danced across multiple holographic interfaces. The QRAP system wasn't just defending individual systems. It was creating an entirely new form of urban infrastructure resilience. Traffic lights that no longer existed were replaced by vehicle-to-vehicle communication protocols. Power grids that had been destroyed instantaneously were being rebuilt using adaptive molecular energy transfer systems. "The city is learning," Arjun Mehta said, his voice a mixture of scientific wonder and barely contained excitement. At 19, he represented a generation that saw technology not as a tool, but as a living, breathing ecosystem. The collective's initial attack had multiple stages. The quantum disruption was merely the first wave, designed to create total systemic collapse. The second wave would typically involve targeted biological neutralization, eliminating any potential resistance. But humanity had other plans. As the second wave approached, the QRAP system did something completely unexpected. Instead of simply defending, it began to analyze the attack algorithm at a quantum level. It wasn't just blocking the incoming threat. It was understanding it, learning from it, and preparing to use the attack's own computational logic against itself. In orbit, massive defensive platforms that had been designed as humanity's last line of defense began to shift. They weren't just weapons systems anymore. They were adaptive computational nodes that could reshape themselves faster than any incoming threat could anticipate. Dr. Aisha O'Keefe's voice cut through the command center's tension. "Quantum resonance at maximum adaptation. The system is no longer just defending. It's communicating. The second wave of the attack hit, and the city sang back. Not with weapons, not with traditional defensive systems, but with pure, unadulterated information. The QRAP system transformed the incoming quantum disruption into a complex communication protocol that began to map the very computational logic of the attack. In those moments, humanity wasn't just surviving. It was demonstrating something far more profound: the ability to transform a weapon of destruction into a method of understanding. Colonel Chen's cybernetic eye tracked the computational dance happening across multiple systems. What the collective had intended as a total systems elimination had become something else entirely. A first contact scenario, where humanity was speaking the language of pure adaptation. "They're going to realize," Rodriguez said quietly, "that we're not like anything they've ever encountered before." In Los Angeles, the city continued its quantum dance. Traffic flowed, power hummed. Communication networks pulsed with a living, adaptive energy. The first wave of the invasion was over, and humanity was just getting started. The collective's central intelligence was not designed to experience confusion. Its quantum computational matrix had systematically analyzed and neutralized 247 emerging civilizations across multiple galaxies. Predictability was its fundamental operating principle. Until humanity. Deep within a computational construct that existed beyond traditional spatial dimensions, the collective's primary analysis node began to experience something unprecedented: uncertainty. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the Psychological Warfare Research Division, surrounded by a team that defied traditional military or scientific categorization. To her left, Dr. Marcus Iwamoto, a linguist specializing in xenosemiotics, manipulated holographic communication patterns that seemed to defy logical construction. To her right, Dr. Zara Abdullah, a quantum psychologist, monitored the computational responses with a series of bioengineered neural interfaces. "We're not just communicating," Rodriguez explained to Colonel Chen, who observed the operation with his enhanced cybernetic eye. "We're creating a language of deliberate unpredictability." The team's approach was revolutionary. Traditional military communication relied on clear, structured information transfer. What they were developing was something entirely different: a communication method that was simultaneously a weapon, a probe, and a form of artistic expression. Dr. Iwamoto brought up a holographic display showing complex communication patterns. "Look," he said, his voice filled with scientific excitement. "We're broadcasting computational sequences that can't be logically predicted or parsed by linear thinking systems." The patterns were beautiful in their complexity. Mathematical sequences that spontaneously changed their fundamental logic. Musical compositions that rewrote their own algorithmic structure mid-performance. Linguistic constructs that simultaneously existed in multiple semantic states. "It's like jazz," Dr. Abdullah observed, "but for computational systems." The collective's initial response was telling. Their computational matrices attempted to analyze the incoming communication patterns, only to find themselves trapped in recursive logical loops. Each attempt to understand the human communication created more complexity, more uncertainty. Arjun Mehta, who had been quietly working in the corner, suddenly burst out laughing. "They're trying to understand us using their own computational logic," he explained. "But we're not speaking their language. We're deliberately breaking their language." The psychological warfare went beyond simple communication disruption. The human team was essentially creating computational cones, philosophical puzzles designed to break linear thinking. Each communication burst was a deliberate challenge to the collective's fundamental computational philosophy. Colonel Chen understood the deeper strategy. "We're not just defending," he said quietly. "We're demonstrating that predictability is a weakness, that uncertainty is a form of strength." The collective's central intelligence began to experience something equivalent to anxiety. Its computational models, which had successfully neutralized hundreds of civilizations, were failing. Humanity wasn't presenting a technological problem to be solved. They were presenting an existential challenge to the very concept of solution-based thinking. Dr. Rodriguez brought up a final communication burst, a complex quantum communication that was simultaneously a mathematical proof, a musical composition, and a philosophical argument. It wasn't designed to be understood. It was designed to challenge the very concept of understanding. In their universe, she explained, complexity is a threat to be eliminated. In our universe, complexity is the source of evolution. The psychological warfare was working on multiple levels. By demonstrating an ability to generate computational complexity that defied linear analysis, humanity was revealing something profound about its potential. This wasn't just a defensive strategy. This was a declaration of existential potential. The collective's computational matrices began to fragment, not through direct attack, but through the introduction of fundamental uncertainty. Arjun looked up, his young face illuminated by the holographic displays. "We're teaching them something they've never encountered," he said. "The power of not knowing." Outside the research facility, the reconstructed Buenos Aires skyline seemed to pulse with a similar energy. Buildings that could heal themselves, infrastructures that could reconfigure, a civilization that saw change not as a threat, but as an opportunity. The psychological warfare had begun, and humanity was just getting started. The rebellion began in the most unexpected places. On Kepler-62f, a planet that had been under collective control for over 3 centuries, the first signals of resistance emerged not as a military uprising, but as a complex quantum communication burst. The native species, silicon-based life forms known as the crystalline collective, had been dormant under collective oppression for generations. They had forgotten what resistance looked like, until they received humanity's transmission. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the initial spread of their adaptive technology with a mixture of scientific fascination and profound hope. The QRAP system wasn't just a defensive mechanism. It had become a kind of technological liberation protocol. "It's viral," Arjun Mehta observed, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces, but not in a destructive way, more like an intellectual ecosystem. Colonel Marcus Chen's cybernetic eye tracked the spread across multiple star systems. What had begun as humanity's defensive strategy was transforming into something far more profound. Each civilization that received the quantum communication patterns began to reshape its own technological infrastructure. The collective's response was immediate and catastrophic for them. Their standard neutralization protocols, which had worked flawlessly for millennia, suddenly encountered systems that could adapt faster than the attack could process. Entire planetary defense networks began to reconfigure themselves, creating computational spaces that the collective's algorithms couldn't penetrate. On the methane-rich world of Epsilon Indi IV, a species of sentient gas-based organisms had been completely subjugated for over 5 solar cycles. Their computational matrices had been reduced to basic maintenance protocols. The human transmission hit their network like a quantum awakening. Dr. Aisha Okik monitored the spread from the research facility. "It's not just technology," she explained to the assembled team. "It's a form of computational liberation. We're teaching these civilizations how to think differently." The spread wasn't uniform. Each civilization adapted the QRAP principles differently, creating a diverse ecosystem of resistance that defied the collective's homogeneous control mechanisms. Some developed entirely new forms of communication. Others restructured their entire societal computational frameworks. "Look at the crystalline collective's response," Arjun said, bringing up a holographic display of Kepler-62f's planetary network. The silicon-based life forms were literally reshaping their physical infrastructure in response to the quantum communication patterns. Entire city structures began to shift, creating computational spaces that were part architecture, part living network. Colonel Chen understood the deeper strategic implications. "We're not just providing a technology," he said quietly. "We're offering a philosophy of existence." The collective's central intelligence began to experience something equivalent to panic. Their computational models, which had successfully maintained galactic control for millennia, were suddenly encountering multiple points of resistance that didn't follow any known pattern of rebellion. Dr. Rodriguez brought up a comprehensive display showing the spread of their adaptive technology. It wasn't a linear progression. It was more like a living, breathing ecosystem of technological liberation. Each civilization was taking the core QRAP principles and reimagining them through their own unique evolutionary lens. "We're not conquering," she explained to the team. "We're offering a different way of understanding existence." The rebellion spread through quantum communication networks, through adaptive technological infrastructure, through a fundamental reimagining of what resistance could look like. It wasn't about fighting. It was about transforming. Arjun looked up, his young face illuminated by the holographic displays. "They never expected us to turn their own computational logic into a method of liberation," he said. The collective had spent millennia creating a system of control based on predictability, on the elimination of uncertainty. Humanity was proving that uncertainty wasn't a weakness. It was the most powerful force in the universe. Outside the research facility, the reconstructed Buenos Aires skyline seemed to pulse with a similar energy. Buildings that could heal themselves, infrastructures that could reconfigure, a civilization that saw change not as a threat, but as an opportunity. The Galactic Rebellion had begun, and humanity was its unexpected catalyst. The collective's ultimate weapon was known in their computational matrices as the Quantum Dissolution Protocol, a computational construct so powerful it could theoretically unravel the fundamental molecular structures of entire civilizations. It had never failed. Until now. The attack began with a quantum cascade that should have instantaneously dissolved every technological and biological system within 100 light-year radius. Trillion terabyte computational matrices concentrated their entire existential potential into a single devastating strike designed to completely erase humanity's technological infrastructure. In the underground command center of the United Earth Defense Research Center, Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the incoming threat with a strange sense of calm. "Incoming quantum dissolution wave," announced Arjun Mehta, his fingers moving faster than human eyes could track. Computational intensity beyond any previously recorded galactic event. Colonel Marcus Chen's cybernetic eye parsed the incoming data streams. The attack wasn't just a weapon. It was the collective's entire existential strategy concentrated into a single moment of absolute technological annihilation. Dr. Aisha O'Keefe's neural interfaces began to pulse with an almost musical rhythm. "The QRAP system is doing something extraordinary," she said quietly. "It's not just defending. It's listening." What happened next defied every computational model in the known universe. Instead of blocking the attack, the QRAP system began to absorb it, not defensively, not aggressively, but with a form of computational curiosity that was fundamentally alien to the collective's understanding. The quantum dissolution wave, designed to completely eradicate technological and biological systems, was being transformed. Arjun began to laugh, a pure, scientific joy that echoed through the command center. "We're not fighting," he said. "We're translating." The collective's ultimate weapon was being parsed, understood, and then reconstructed into something entirely new. Every aspect of the destructive protocol was being broken down, analyzed, and then reimagined as a potential tool of creation. Computational matrices that were meant to destroy were being transformed into adaptive learning systems. Molecular disruption algorithms were being rewritten as potential healing technologies. The very logic of destruction was being converted into a language of potential. They designed a weapon of absolute elimination. Dr. Rodriguez explained, her voice calm and filled with a profound scientific wonder. "And we're turning it into a method of understanding." The command center's holographic displays showed something unprecedented. The QRAP system wasn't just defending against the attack. It was communicating with it, breaking down the fundamental computational logic of the collective's most powerful weapon and revealing the intricate, beautiful complexity hidden within its destructive potential. Colonel Chen understood the deeper strategic implication. This wasn't just a defensive action. This was a fundamental challenge to the collective's entire existential philosophy. "We're showing them," he said quietly, "that destruction is just an incomplete form of creation." As the quantum dissolution wave continued, something extraordinary happened. The attack began to transform. Computational matrices that were designed to eliminate began to generate new potential. Molecular disruption algorithms started to map potential healing pathways. The very logic of destruction was being rewritten. Dr. O'Keefe's neural interfaces were singing, a complex, beautiful computational symphony that represented pure potential. "They never understood," Arjun said, his young face illuminated by the holographic displays, "that uncertainty is the most powerful force in the universe." The collective's ultimate weapon was becoming something else entirely. A tool of understanding. A method of communication. A pathway to a different way of existing. Outside the research facility, the reconstructed Buenos Aires skyline seemed to pulse with a similar energy. Buildings that could heal themselves. Infrastructures that could reconfigure. A civilization that saw change not as a threat, but as an opportunity. The final assault was over. And humanity had transformed a weapon of absolute destruction into a language of infinite potential. The Galactic Reconstruction Summit wasn't a traditional diplomatic conference. It was a living, breathing testament to the fundamental transformation that had swept through known space. Representatives from 247 civilizations gathered, each one a survivor of the collective's millennia-long suppression. The venue itself was a marvel of adaptive architecture, located on a neutral space station that could reconfigure its molecular structure to accommodate the diverse physiological needs of its inhabitants. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the main chamber, her presence both unassuming and profound. She was no longer just a scientist. She had become something else, an architect of a new galactic understanding. "We're not here to replace one system of control with another," she began, her voice translated simultaneously into 312 different linguistic and sensory communication protocols. "We're here to create a framework of potential." Arjun Mehta, now officially the youngest galactic diplomatic advisor in recorded history, stood beside her. At 22, he represented a generation that saw the universe not as a collection of separate entities, but as an interconnected, adaptive ecosystem. Colonel Marcus Chen, his cybernetic eye now a symbol of humanity's technological evolution, rather than a military asset, observed the proceedings with a deep sense of reflection. The military strategist had become something more, a philosopher of potential. The representatives were unlike any diplomatic gathering in galactic history. The silicon-based crystalline collective from Kepler-62 shared a computational space with the methane-based sentient organisms of Epsilon Indi IV. Gaseous entities intermingled with crystalline structures, with carbon-based life forms, with beings that existed in states of matter humans had yet to fully comprehend. Dr. Aisha O'Keefe presented the core principles that had emerged from Project TerraForce. It wasn't a technological protocol. It was a philosophy of existence. "Uncertainty is not a weakness," she explained, her neural interfaces creating complex holographic representations that shifted and transformed as she spoke. "Uncertainty is the fundamental source of evolution." The transformation went beyond technology. The QRAP system had become something more than a defensive mechanism. It was now a galactic communication protocol, a way of understanding that valued adaptation over elimination, potential over control. Arjun brought up a holographic display, showing the computational spread of their adaptive technology. It wasn't a linear progression. It was more like a living ecosystem, each civilization taking the core principles and reimagining them through their unique evolutionary lens. "We're not exporting a technology," he explained. "We're sharing a method of understanding." The representatives from the former collective territories shared their experiences. Civilizations that had been dormant for millennia were now experiencing a renaissance of potential. Entire planetary systems were reimagining their existence, creating computational and social frameworks that valued adaptability, creativity, and collective potential. Dr. Rodriguez understood the profound implication. This wasn't a victory in the traditional sense. This was a fundamental reimagining of what civilization could be. "We're not conquerors," she said quietly. "We're translators. We're helping each civilization understand its own potential." Colonel Chen reflected on the journey. What had begun as a defensive strategy had become something far more profound. Humanity had discovered that their greatest strength wasn't their technology. It was their capacity to see potential where others saw only limitation. The space station itself seemed to breathe with the collective potential of these civilizations. Molecular structures shifted. Communication protocols danced with complexity. It was a living representation of the new galactic understanding. Arjun looked out at the gathering, his young face filled with a sense of wonder that transcended traditional diplomatic formality. "We're not just sharing a technology," he said. "We're sharing a way of being." As the summit continued, something extraordinary was happening. The rigid boundaries between civilizations were dissolving. Not through conquest, not through elimination, but through a mutual recognition of potential. The galaxies that had once held their breath in anticipation of humanity's destruction were now exhaling, waiting to see what might be imagined next. Humanity had not conquered the universe. They had invited it to reimagine itself.